Hi, my name is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring, a wrestling recap and discussion show. And it has been some time since I last talked about the wide world of professional wrestling, at least the WWE flavored variety. And yeah, we are going to be talking about TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs 2018. It was last Sunday, but I wasn't able to find time to watch it until a couple days ago, and now I'm going to share my thoughts on it. So, first of all, thanks for listening, guys. I know it's been a while. Like I said, for my Survivor Series review, that I would kind of be taking a bit of a break from the weekly shows, or at least reviewing the weekly shows, because I had to focus on some other projects and just life stuff. But on the projects end, I'm currently working on a new gaming related podcast that I'm looking to launch in the new year, next month. So that should be exciting. It'll be a weekly show. So if you're into my video game related stuff, mainly like my other podcast, Carving Gaming Rushmores, this will be a fun one to follow if you're into games, or if you just like hearing my stupid, dumb, velvety voice talking to a microphone for all of your pleasure. So yeah, keep an eye on that. In the meantime, to kind of catch up in terms of the weekly shows, I have been watching them. You know, I've still watched Raw, SmackDown, NXT as well, of course. And just a quick recap of what I've thought about the things that have been going on in between Survivor Series and now. Raw has been something of a disaster, which might not be surprising to hear if you've been watching or if you've been following the general reception to Raw. I'm kind of in the same boat where it has not been great. Just a lot of just weird illogical stuff. Too much Baron Corbin, and kind of running down the whole like heel authority figure angle, which can work, but not. It's just been too much, and just the no real top hero. It's very much they're still trying to pick up the pieces after Roman left, and you know, you've got Rollins there, but outside of him, I guess the second biggest face is I guess Strowman, but Strowman's been gone with his injury, so that has only crippled things further. So yeah, it has been a bit of a train wreck on Raw, we'll say. SmackDown, much less so. Like, SmackDown hasn't been like amazing television, but it's been far better. I'm really enjoying Daniel Bryan's heel turn, or his new heel character, I should say. The stories over there at least have more purpose, it feels like, and have everyone's getting used in some capacity, or at least a lot of the main players are being used, and there's a bunch more stories, like interesting stories that seem to be getting told better. It just seems like a better paced and more entertaining show that doesn't drag. And granted, it has to do with being an hour shorter, but in general, I've thoroughly enjoying SmackDown in comparison to Raw. So with that said, let's hop to it. We got a 4-hour show to get into. We will not talk about the pre-show because I did not watch the pre-show, which featured the ladder match between Elias and the almighty Bobby Lashley. He has become almighty in the time between Survivor Series and now, with a guitar hanging above the ring. Apparently, from what I understand, it was not a very long match and not great. So basically the impression I got was that I did not miss anything in terms of that. And then the other pre-show match, I believe, was the Cruiserweight Championship match, Buddy Murphy defending against Cedric Alexander. I believe that was originally on the main show and then got bumped. Probably a good match. Those two are really good, and they work well together, but got nothing to say about it. So with that said, let's hop straight to the main show. TLC, Tables and Ladders and Chairs, oh my! And we start the show off in a surprising fashion, and I don't remember this being announced, but we get the finals of the Mixed Match Challenge between R-Truth and Carmella taking on Jinder Mahal and Alicia Fox. I have not watched any of season 2 of the Mixed Match Challenge, but I can, based on what I've seen of it, which is just those little promos that they show during the show with the competitors talking trash to each other. On one, season 2 of the Mixed Match Challenge feels like it's been going on for about 5 years. It just keeps going, or it kept going and going and going, and every time I saw a new thing for it, I was like, this hasn't ended yet. And then apparently they added like a round robin tournament or round robin aspect to it, which extended its duration. And then they added the grand prize at the end, where the winning team got both a trip around the world. Or not trip around the world, but they got a trip to any destination in the world of their choice. And also, they each would get the number 30 spot in their respective Royal Rumbles. So that's a big deal. The second one, not the trip. But, yeah. With that said, it's surprising that it came down to these two teams. I believe Jinder and Alicia had not won a match at all until the end, which I'm not sure how this tournament was structured, but I don't know how you can lose the entire tournament basically and then somehow win 1 or 2 matches and get to the finals, even in a round robin. I'm not really sure how that works. And Truth and Carmella, I don't know what their record was, but it was kind of lame seeing it come down. It's like it's basically 2 comedy teams, especially with stakes that high. Especially since I was like, I don't care really who wins, because like that kind of takes away the number 30 spot, which is usually the most interesting spot, because it could be a surprise or just someone important. So to know that it would be a comedy wrestler or a jobber in the men's spot, and then like out of the 4, the most credible person is Carmella, just because over the summer she was the top heel on SmackDown as the women's champion. So I was like, oh, okay, sure, I guess. And then the match itself wasn't very good. It was very much kind of a comedy match. It felt like a pre-show match that somehow bled onto the main show, which I don't understand why they would not have this on the pre-show. It's easily it's very pre-show-y, has nothing to do with TLC. You could have just had you may as well just have the ladder match, like just swap the ladder match with this match and have that open the show, or just on the card, because at least it fits the theme of tables, ladders, and chairs. Plus, the Elias versus Bobby feud has been one of the featured feuds on Raw every week. So that's weird to me that match opened the show and not something else. Very bizarre. Like I said, the match wasn't anything to write home about, but Truth and Carmella picked up the win. And then after the match, I don't know her name, but she's one of the other interviewer ladies. That's not Charlie Caruso. But she asked them where they're gonna go for their trip, because now Carmella and R-Truth are 30 in a Royal Rumble, so all the other business to take care of is where are you gonna go. And Carmella's very excited. She's naming all of these incredible destinations, like we're gonna go to Barcelona, or like I don't know, I think she said Paris or Rome or whatever. And apparently, according to the interviewer lady, the teams had to submit their trips of choice to, I guess, the office or whatever, prior to this match, which Carmella seems taken aback by and was not aware of. But Truth says he had it covered. He's taking care of it, so not to worry. And so Truth knows where they're going. So Carmella's asking, just excited, like, what'd you pick? What'd you pick? Are we going to all these places? And Truth's just hyping it up, saying, like, no, it's better than that. It's better than that. And then finally he reveals that they will be taking a trip to WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. And Carmella's face drops, we'll say. She is not happy to hear this. Who would be? It would be like getting a vacation to like if you worked at like McDonald's and you got a vacation to like McDonald's world headquarters. It's like great. So yeah, I that's kind of a letdown, I guess. I was kind of like the whole world trip aspect was kind of a throwaway prize, but I was like, that could be interesting if they actually like show footage of wherever they go. just to kind of at least give it some meaning. But they could still do that. I mean, they probably will, because how could you not go to WWE headquarters and not film something? So maybe this could still pay off in some funny skits. But yeah, kind of a letdown. And again, like, on Truth and number 30 in the Rumble, kind of like, well, there goes one of the more interesting aspects of the Rumble, because Truth's not going to win. And Carmella, if this happened over the summer, this would be a bigger deal. This Carmella, not so much, but yeah, kind of a weird way to kick off this show, and maybe not the best way, because the crowd wasn't like super duper into it. Next we get up to the second match, which really should have just been the opener, and it felt like it was the Triple Threat Tag Team Championship match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles, I should specify, between the defending champions, The Bar, the Usos, and the New Day. And these three teams have been feuding off and on with each other for the last few months, and it's crazy that all three of them have held the titles, I think, 5 times or more, which you don't really see, or we haven't really seen in a long time in the tag division. Like, I'm trying to think, maybe not since the Attitude Era have we seen like more than 1 or 2 teams have that many title reigns in the division. Like, I think, like, yeah, like the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys were the last time you saw like that kind of trifecta of gold, I guess. Which kind of speaks to how good those teams are and how much better the tag division is, even though it's still not perfect. But that has more to do with it being separated into 2 okay divisions instead of just one awesome division. But yeah, this was a regular match. Kind of the Triple Threat rules were like 2 people from like a member of each team, but only 2 are in the ring, and then the odd team out has to tag themselves into the match, which is always kind of confusing to me. Like, these matches don't happen often, but this match was really good, but it got a little confusing keeping track of who was legal, because it was really fast-pacing and really chaotic, and people are just flying and tagging in left and right. So just kind of relying on the commentators to be like, sure, whoever you say is legal, I'm going to assume is right. This was a good match. It would have been... I felt like this needed to be a ladder match, just because of that kind of that comparison to the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, like and to fit the show of like, this is a good match, but it feels like it needs a stipulation of some sort. But even as is, this was a totally solid good match between 3 of the best teams in the company. The Bar picked up the win, retaining the titles by I think Sheamus bro-kicked the video games out of Xavier Woods. And the Bar continues to roll. The Bar has ditched Big Show officially, which is good, because that was something that was really weird and random and kind of didn't do much for the team anyway, outside of, I guess, kind of even up the score when they were feuding with New Day a bit. But long term, it was never going to be a viable thing. It's good to see the Bar kind of back to where they were when they were on Raw, because they were kind of floundering on SmackDown for a while. But yeah, totally solid match, and I'm curious to see who steps up next. I think the New Day and the Usos are kind of, as great as they are, they've kind of been the only ones that have been challenging for the title, so we kind of need some new teams in there. But who do you do? I mean, Sanity is like always MIA, even though they would be the prime option because they're fresh, and the Bludgeon Brothers are still out. I think Roman is still out with his injury, and I say this, and I should probably specify this now. I can't remember if I said it in the beginning or not, even though the recording's only 14 minutes in, but I have not yet watched Raw or SmackDown post TLC. I know some big stuff happened. I don't know what those big things are. I have avoided specifics because I have both shows recorded to watch, but I've just been too busy to find time to watch them. And I was thinking about watching them before recording this and doing them all in one go, but I just could not, like, my schedule just won't allow it. So if the Bludgeon Brothers came back on SmackDown, then everything I just said is null and void. But as of now, like as of TLC, they are still out. So that said, who steps up, barring that a team from NXT shows up and inserts themselves into the title picture, the tag title picture on SmackDown? No. Anyways, good match and a lot of fun. Next up, surprisingly, we have one of the big featured matches, and a match that I kind of thought would main event the show, was Braun Strowman and Baron Corbin in a TLC match. And the stipulation of this match was that if Braun wins, he earns a Universal Championship match against Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble. If Corbin wins, he becomes the permanent general manager. And also, if Braun wins, Corbin will be out of power. It's kind of the other caveat here. Yeah, so much of Raw has been focused around Corbin in this match that even though I didn't want it to main event, I assumed it would. And the big question would be if Braun would show up, because Braun is injured with some sort of elbow injury, which originally I thought was going to be kayfabe, but it apparently is legit. So Corbin for weeks is saying that he is just going to take the forfeit victory and be permanent GM and not taking any rumor of Braun showing up seriously. And what happens, of course, is that Corbin comes out with Heath Slater, who he has made his personal kind of lackey referee, his crooked referee, and cuts a promo real quick saying that he takes the complaints about Raw seriously, but at the same time, too bad, you're gonna have to deal with it. And as Slater is counting the 10 count to officially give Corbin the win, Braun shows up at 7. With his arm in a sling, so he is still not cleared to compete. But in kind of a cool twist, he grabs the mic and says, dude, this is a TLC match, so there's no disqualification, which means that I can have people help me if I want to, because you can't, nothing's preventing them from running out to help me. And with that, Apollo Crews, Chad Gable, Bobby Roode, and Finn Balor all show up at ringside with chairs and surround the ring. And the idea is that these are all men that Baron Corbin has wronged in some way, though I don't remember what Baron Corbin did to Apollo, honestly. Like, I'm trying to remember. Like, he was the odd man out. Like, I know Apollo the last couple of weeks has randomly been, like, helping to fight Corbin, but I can't remember what wrong Corbin has committed to Apollo specifically. That's the kind of weird thing missing from this, unless I'm forgetting something, but I feel like I'm not. But yeah, they surround the ring and they all get in and they proceed to go off on him with some chair shots, and they beat Corbin out of the ring. Corbin tries to run, and then Kurt Angle makes his return, cutting him off at the ramp, and grabs a chair of his own and beats Corbin with the chair back into the ring, where the good guys proceed to what we like to describe as running a train on Corbin with a bunch of finishing moves, finishers all around. Heath Slater turns good again, even though I don't think he ever really turned heel. He was more just kind of like doing things against his will. But yeah, he takes the ref shirt off. He gets a shot in on Corbin too. Finn hits the coup de grace. Everyone's just going ham on Corbin right now. And then after Corbin is basically dead, Braun comes in, puts a foot on his chest, and Slater counts 3, and Corbin is no longer the general manager of Raw, which is great, and the crowd popped big for that. The crowd has, up to this point, was kind of mild, we'll say, but they did pop for that announcement that Corbin was no longer in power, which is a good moment because, like I said, Raw, one of the big problems with Raw was this whole kind of Baron Corbin thing and how much it dominated the show. So now that that is done, great. The show can hopefully just get better by default. But this was a smart way to do this, given that Braun physically could not compete. And it was a nice feel-good moment to see all the good guys finally, after weeks of being beaten up and held down, to kind of get a chance to just eviscerate the main villain. It does make you question why none of the heels that Corbin had in his pocket would come out and try to help him, given that they've all benefited from Corbin being in power, like Lashley or Drew. And because if Finn was out there, and Finn wrestled later in the night, so why not Drew? You think Lashley and Drew would, at the very least, because they've been the two closest to Corbin, would come out, along with like the AOP, because there was no reason for them not to come out. So that's the only kind of like plot hole, I guess you would see, or I would see with this scenario. But other than that, nice little moment here, and it's nice to not have Corbin BGM anymore. Next up is a kind of a sleeper match in terms of storytelling, and on the card is Ruby Riott taking on Natalya. And the story of this match has been Ruby and the Riott Squad being jerks by breaking Natalya's the glasses belonging to Jim Neidhart, Natalia's father, legendary member of the Hart Foundation, who recently passed away, and them kind of taking the piss on Natalya losing her dad by first they broke. Oh, I'm getting the story mixed up here. Well, first, Natalya had brought her dad's famous sunglasses that he always wore to the ring, and Ruby Riott broke them during a match because she's a jerk. And then since then, they've just been taunting her. And then on Raw, prior to this, they brought out a table because they're having a tables match tonight. So Ruby brought out a table with Jim Neidhart's, like a decal of Jim Neidhart on the table, and saying that the two of them are going to be closer than ever after Ruby slams Natalya through this table. So this has been really good stuff in terms of making Ruby and the squad seem just like the biggest dicks ever, as well as getting, for the first time, feeling genuine sympathy for Natalya, who I've never really... You know, Natalya, she's always solid in the ring, and I enjoy watching her matches for the most part. As a character, I've never really cared much for her or had a reason to get genuinely invested in her. I don't know, there's something about her that just doesn't grab me from a personality standpoint. She doesn't have a ton of personality, let me just say that. Neither as a heel or a babyface. But this is the first time that something with her resonated with me on an emotional level. So I was like, you know what, I kind of want to see Natalya, I want to see Natalya try to get her revenge here. And the squad comes out. Ruby's in all white, which is kind of a weird look for her. And of course, they bring out the Jim Neidhart table. And we get ourselves a big brawl at the start. And, you know, they don't waste time setting up a table on the outside. Natalya sets them up. And in a very scary / great looking spot, so there's a table outside the ring in front of the announce table. Ruby is outside the ring on the apron, and Natty is going to try to spear Ruby off the apron through the table. And as she's doing this, she's charging her. Liv Morgan gets up in the apron and pushes Ruby out of the way and gets speared instead to kind of take the bullet. And she goes flying off of the apron and crashes hard through the table. And it looks great, but then it becomes scary because Morgan, as soon as she hits the table, she is like she looks genuinely hurt, and I can tell because you can hear her breathing like kind of almost like hyperventilating, like kind of like when you get the wind knocked out of you, which I can only assume is what happened there because she was like breathing super hard and fast, and you could hear it clearly on the camera. And the refs are all checking her, and Sarah Logan looks genuinely concerned. But yeah, she's looking like just awful, and it's pretty scary for me. It's like, okay, like at the very least, she got the wind knocked out of her. At the very worst, maybe she broke a rib or something. But yeah, like if you go back and watch it, like it looked great, but she flew hard and fast off that apron through the table. So yet another kind of a real life injury. Assuming she's injured, I don't know what happened with her exactly. I haven't watched Raw, so I don't know if anything's happened or if it was just something as simple as her getting the breath knocked out of her. But again, Liv Morgan just taking the hard hits and getting hurt. But it looked good, if nothing else. But yeah, this match was pretty decent. Like it was, it had some points where it kind of dragged, but the storytelling was more kind of the highlight. Eventually, Sarah Logan got slammed through a table, so that left it 1-on-1. And then, like, Ruby showed off some really great heel psychology, but, like, there's, like, a point where she, like, shoves Natty's face into the gym table, and it's, like, saying that Jim's ashamed of her. And then, in a nice little twist, eventually Natty busts out a table with Ruby Riott on it. And then eventually, they fight over this table for a while. And then eventually, they set up the Ruby table, and Ruby tries to go for a top rope Frankensteiner to Natty through the table, but then Natty holds on and then delivers a very big top rope kind of sit out power bomb through the table to Ruby, giving Natty the win. And yeah, this match was again, like, I think it was one of the kind of low-key more interesting feuds and stories going into this show, and I'm always a big fan of non-title personal feuds, especially in a women's division where you kind of don't get a ton of that all the time. I like that this should be over, so this, like, I'm a fan of feuds that also have definitive ends and a definitive winner, which Natty would certainly be in this case. And Ruby Riott shows off once again that she's one of the best heels in the division right now. and more than deserves to be in a title hunt. And I hope she finds her way there after this show. I think she would be a great challenger for the Royal Rumble against Ronda Rousey. Next up, we have a match that I was personally looking forward to. Finn Balor taking on Drew McIntyre. And this is just a pure grudge match. McIntyre has been bullying Finn and beating him up. And Finn is like, son, not today. And Finn cost Drew his first loss by helping Dolph Ziggler beat Drew a couple weeks ago on Raw. And then Drew beat him up for that. And yeah, these two are finally butting heads. These are two of my favorite guys on the roster, and this is the first time they faced off. So on paper, I was like, okay, this could be a dark horse for match of the night, possibly. Immediately, the commentators were getting on my nerves because they kept referring to Finn as a rebel. He's the rebel of Monday Night Raw, because he's been kind of leading the charge in terms of sticking it to Baron Corbin, but they keep shoving that term down our throats, as WWE tends to do with things. Once they come up with a thing, they gotta keep reminding you every 2 seconds, like, yeah, Finn's a rebel. He's the rebel. And it's like, okay, got it. Please stop calling him a rebel. And this match was like a good kind of big man, little man, David Goliath. Drew dominating a lot of it, and Drew being just so good at being a sadistic, cocky heel and just wrestling. He's good at wrestling his style, or like he wrestles his sides. Like he knows he's a big, scary bastard, and the way he, like his mannerisms and the way he taunts you, like he just, something about his style, like he just emphasizes how big he is and like that he could murder anyone. And Finn was doing a good job, kind of wrestling smart against Drew, kind of hitting when he can and then moving and just trying to outmaneuver Finn, or trying to outmaneuver Drew, and then Drew just throwing Balor around and dominating him whenever he got his hands on him. So yeah, I thought this was it wasn't like this classic, but I thought it was a totally good, solid match. And then eventually Dolph Ziggler, who has finally broken up with Drew McIntyre in the past few weeks, which watching that made me do some dancing and cartwheels and maybe shoot some fireworks, because if you've been listening to my other shows, you know that I've been counting the days for these two to split. So the last month, of all the things that Raw has been bugging me about, this has not been one of them, at least. Drew McIntyre has been one of the lone highlights of the show. And then Dolph comes in through the crowd and tries to, he does super kick Drew and then tries to hit him with a chair. He fails at this, and then Drew beats him up for a while, throws him back in the ring with the chair. Finn drop kicks the chair into Drew, allowing Finn to hit the coup de grace for the surprise, kind of I guess you call that an upset, really. And yeah, Finn Balor gets a big win, which he is always kind of in need of. So that was a good moment. And, you know, the loss doesn't really hurt Drew, one, because it was a little tainted, but also Drew is he's not quite a made man, but he is very close to it. Like he has been consistently awesome, and I think the company kind of realizes how good he is as a top villain, so I think he's fine. Like, he can afford a loss to Finn, especially in this fashion, so I wasn't too worried about that. But yeah, so I was happy with this result all around. Like, Finn getting a win, which he desperately needed, and Drew still looking like a Scottish serial killer that can dominate anything. Next up, we got a chairs match between Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio. And the story of this match is that Orton, in the last month or so, has picked Rey as his latest, the latest fly that he wants to pull the wings off of, because Randy Orton is an insane person, and he's been murdering Rey the last few weeks. He beat him up with a chair. He even Pillmanized him by putting his head in the chair and shoving it into the turnbuckle. And he's also he's unmasked Rey. In the ultimate form of disrespect, he's unmasked Rey, and he claimed the mask as a trophy, and talked about how he didn't care about kind of Rey's, like, the respect behind the mask. And then Rey coming back and trying to fight off Randy, but not really getting much success, though he did get in some chair shots on the SmackDown prior to the show. So yeah, finally this feud comes to a head. And immediately I thought that this match probably shouldn't have been positioned right after the last match, because they're two very similar stories, in that you got the big sadistic heel taking on the much smaller never say die babyface. And to kind of emphasize this is that being a chairs match, we had a very similar ending. But before we get to that, there were some cool little spots in this match. There was a really cool point where Ray hit his sliding splash outside of the ring to the floor, but he used a chair instead. So he kind of rode it like a boogie board, which is how Corey Graves very aptly described it. So that was cool. And then at one point, Ray tries to hit a seated Seton to Randy Orton, who's sitting on a chair outside, but Randy moves, so Ray literally just flies kind of legs open into this open chair to the floor, and it looked painful as hell. There's no way you can just kind of like, there's no good way to take something like that. So I was like, oh my God, that's gotta hurt your crotch and your tailbone, just, but yeah, just watching this match, I was like, man, this is really just too similar to the last match. Like, they probably should have had something in between this or something. And then kind of emphasizing that point was the ending where they set up a row, or Randy set up a row of chairs, all open, like 4 of them. And the idea was that he was going to RKO Ray into them. Ray escapes this because he is not a fan of death. And then in kind of a creative spot, he kind of incapacitates Orton and has him sitting on one of the chairs at the end. And then Ray kind of runs up along the chairs and then hits a Hurricane Rana into like a small package and gets a surprise kind of fluke win. And so just looking at that, I was like, so in 2 back-to-back matches, we had the much smaller kind of plucky face defeat the sadistic heel with the help of a chair. They're like, it's like, does no one really, like, when you kind of put these matches together, and I don't know how it works, but, like, do you submit, like, the finish to your matches before the show? And, like, if you have all the finishes to the matches, you don't, like, see those 2 next to each other and think, like, well, those are actually pretty similar. Maybe we should shuffle this around and separate them? I don't know. I don't know how it works. I'm just talking, just complete shot in the dark guessing, talking out of my ass to a degree. But yeah, just watching that, that's all I could help but think. I was like, we just kind of saw something like this, or like the same idea in the last match. So, but yeah, Ray picked up the win. I was very surprised. I thought Orton would win this to kind of continue his reign of terror. Maybe Orton will just eviscerate Ray on SmackDown. But yeah, surprise win, and Ray continues to look good in his return. And Randy has been a very, very good heel. But now that AJ is no longer champion, because if you remember, if you're a fan of the show, I was saying for a long time that I felt like Randy would be working his way up to challenge AJ for the title, and I thought maybe Randy would be the one to end AJ's reign. But now that that's been flipped on its head, I'm not sure where this new Randy kind of ends up, like what the ultimate end game is for him. So things have been shaken up. They shook things up on me. It's like they knew they were listening. They heard what I thought it was going to be, and they said, let's surprise them and do something completely different. Anyways, moving on. Finn Balor is being interviewed backstage, and he's asked about how he feels about Dolph Ziggler interfering in his match, and Finn is actually not cool about that, which is a relief to me for the sake of just kind of realistic continuity, because why should Finn be happy that Dolph came in? He doesn't like Dolph, and Dolph is still a jerk. And I like that they followed this up, because Finn's saying this, and then Dolph comes up being all smug, as he normally is, and says, hey, you should thank me for what I did. And Finn is like, basically, screw you, dude. And then Dolph takes a cheap shot at Finn and kind of throws him into a case. And Finn is very upset after that. So I like that Dolph is still a heel, I guess, because even though Drew McIntyre turned on him, that shouldn't automatically turn Dolph face like you often see in kind of wrestling alignment changes. Like, this is more realistic, where, like, he's not so much a face as he's still a heel. He just got backstabbed by another heel, so that doesn't mean he's automatically, like, kissing babies and embracing the fans again. He just wants to get revenge on one specific person, but he is still very much a jerk. So I like that bit of kind of like a realistic consistency with that character, which is one of the nicest things I can say about Dolph Ziggler. So yeah, and then later in the night, it was announced that these two would face each other the following night on Raw. So nice little touch here. Next up, we get one of the marquee matches of the night. We've got Ronda Rousey defending the Raw Women's Championship against one Nia Jax, aka the hashtag Facebreaker, because you just can't say Facebreaker yet. You gotta put the hashtag on it, because saying hashtag out loud is always cool, at least in WWE's eyes. Of course, this is a rematch from their Money in the Bank encounter, which was Ronda's first singles match that ended in kind of a no contest when Alexa Bliss cashed in Money in the Bank and just kind of snuck out with the title, a la a bit like Seth Rollins. And this was another good match between these two. These two have chemistry. Ronda, once again, she has very much been like the comparisons to Kurt Angle in terms of like how quickly she's picked it up. I think that's actually not an exaggeration. She has picked it up like very few newcomers do. Like she seems now to the right kind of the end of the year and coming up on like 1 year since she's debuted. That'll be at the Rumble. She's gotten so comfortable so fast, and she looks like she's been doing it for longer than she has. And I think that Nia isn't the greatest in the ring. It kind of depends on who you put her up against. And I think that Ronda is one of those pairings that just works because they have a great dynamic of Nia being the unstoppable monster that can kind of counteract Ronda's technique with just sheer size and power. And a good job of kind of telling that story of Ronda having to try to out wrestle and kind of try to out submit Nia, just all over her like a damn spider monkey, just all over her body, with just trying to lock in all these different submissions, and the way she kind of seamlessly would like counter Nia's power moves into like a choke or just anything, and then Nia just tossing her around and Ronda getting to sell. Ronda's gotten very good at selling. She's almost like Brock in terms of someone that, as dominant as they are, they actually sell very well for someone that's always kind of beating the tar out of people. And in a nice little finish here, Ronda picks up the win when she counters. Oh man, I can't remember what she countered, but she countered one of Nia's moves. It might have been a Samoan drop, and she looks at Tamina, who Tamina tried to interfere at one point and then failed miserably because she's a terrible sidekick. And Ronda gets Nia down, grabs the arm, looks at Tamina with that great face and just kind of points at her like, this is for you, and then kisses Nia's hand, which is the same hand that broke Becky's face, and then locks in not quite an arm bar, like a different kind of arm trap, but Nia taps immediately. And I just thought that whole sequence was just kind of badass and cool looking, especially when they played it in slow motion, because you just really got to see Ronda's visuals, which she's up there with Alexa Bliss in terms of one of the best kind of facial actors or actresses in the company. Like, she's got like an Edge caliber facial reactions. And yeah, about as much as I expected. I didn't think Ronda would lose the title here, as she should not. She should probably hold that thing through WrestleMania. But this was another surprisingly good outing, I guess. I say surprised because I don't know. There's something about this pairing. Maybe you wouldn't think they would have as good matches as they had, but I was impressed by their Money in the Bank match, and I think that this one was better than that. So, nice outing here. After the match, Nia walks backstage holding her arm, just looking all sorts of depressed. And then, in a great little moment, Becky Lynch comes up to her looking all sorts of not pleased. And she goes, "Remember when you broke my face?" I can't do an Irish accent as has been established in the past. "Remember when you broke my face?" Damn it. It's hard. Especially, I have to do a female voice with an Irish accent. That's very hard. And then she punches Nia down, like just knocks the crap out of her, and yells at Nia to keep her name out of her mouth. And then Tamina, again, showing that she is the worst sidekick in the world. She shows up after this happens. It's like, where were you? What were you doing the whole time? Were you just in the ring? Like, why weren't you back there with her? But Nia's, just really getting kicked while she's down here. But I thought that was a nice way to kind of finally follow up all the last month or so of Nia bragging about beating up Becky, and then Nia finally getting hurt. And then a bit of just, again, continuity of like both rosters are here. So anyone that has issues with anyone on another show, this is a good chance to do it. And we'll see that again later on tonight. Next up, AJ Styles is being interviewed, and he says that he's tired of playing Bryan's game and that tonight Bryan is playing his, which is probably a phenomenal game. And that leads us to our WWE Championship match. The new Daniel Bryan defending against the phenomenal one, AJ Styles. Of course, the last month, as I've said before, Daniel has been playing a rather phenomenal heel, which is I think a little surprising given how just popular he was as a babyface. Maybe you wouldn't expect him to be as good of a heel as he is right now. But yeah, he's been playing up the kind of the eco-friendly, because, you know, in real life, Daniel very much is a kind of like eco-conscious guy, you know, recycling, all that good stuff, which I respect and I endorse as well. But he's turned up the kind of douchebag element of that by kind of talking down to us, saying that we're destroying the planet and that we're all sinners, and also making or at least bringing up the fact that wrestling fans are extremely fickle, which he runs home by screaming fickle over and over, which he is absolutely right on that fact. Wrestling fans are extremely fickle. Like, you think they like something, and then when they get the thing that they like, they hate it. So I very much, that is not off the mark. So him kind of rubbing that in is a good way to get hated, because nobody wants to be confronted with the truth. And yeah, just saying that he is a changed man, and that his dreams are working for him now, or whatever he says. But I think everyone expected this to be a good match because it's Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. How could it not be? And this was a very good back and forth match. In fact, it was probably, not even probably, and looking back on it, it's got to be the best. It was the best pure wrestling match on the show. Like, these two were, it's kind of was hard to pick apart like anything about it. They were just going tit for tat for a while. Bryan turning up his aggression and just coming off as genuinely just a jerk, and then Styles being his normal kind of fiery pit bull self, just not backing down. And it was a very fun little chess match between these two. And in a somewhat surprising win, Daniel wins. And I'm not surprised that he won, but how he won, where I thought maybe he would cheat or use some sort of shenanigans, but he instead beat Styles totally clean. He managed to kind of out-wrestle him when Styles he goes for the phenomenal forearm, and in kind of a cool callback to how Daniel won the title, Daniel tries to kind of he pushed the ref in front of him, but Styles catches himself this time before he can hit the ref. And then Bryan tries to go for maybe the running knee, or it might have been another low blow, but whatever it was, Styles counters it and kind of turns it into like a small package. But then, like, at the count of two, Bryan rolls the small package over to where now Styles' shoulders are down, and then he gets this kind of quick, I'll say maybe even fluke 1, 2, 3, and completely surprises Styles, and Bryan retains. So after all of that, it was just a small adjustment in kind of like technique that Bryan retains the title. So no tights pulling, no nothing like that. He just beat him, which I guess is good to kind of establish that Bryan can win without tricks. And I guess a good way to kind of rebuild him after kind of getting half destroyed in his first pay-per-view match as a heel against Lesnar. So yeah, I would love to see Bryan hold this belt until WrestleMania, if for no other reason than I think that would be a really cool kind of full circle of, like, you know, Bryan famously winning the title at WrestleMania 30 as the beloved challenger to the title, and now this year at WrestleMania, he is the hated villain defending the title. I think that would be kind of a cool story to tell, so I hope he holds on to it. Who does he defend it against at WrestleMania if this were to happen? Now, that's a very good question, because you can't do AJ again, probably. Who are the other big faces on SmackDown? Like Hardy, I don't really see happening, but you never know. I mean, Joe's a heel, Nakamura's a heel, Orton's a heel, Mysterio probably not. So that's actually a great question of who would be the big face big babyface challenger on SmackDown to try to stand up to Bryan at WrestleMania, unless they either bring up an NXT guy or someone from Raw wins the Rumble and then challenges Bryan and moves over there. But that's an interesting question that WWE asked for themselves, assuming that Bryan does hold it till then. So I would love to see how that would shape up if that's the direction they go with. Backstage, Ronda Rousey's being interviewed, and Charlie brings up that now that Nia is vanquished, is she gonna go after Charlotte like she promised she would? And Ronda simply says that payback's a bitch and that she's the baddest woman on the planet. Short and sweet, and some nice foreshadowing. Next up, we have Dean Ambrose taking on Seth Rollins, and probably, I guess, the marquee match, maybe, just because it was on the poster for the show. Of course, this has been brewing for the last, 2 months, because, of course, Roman went down with his leukemia, and then that same night, Dean Ambrose turned on Seth after they won the tag titles. And since then, the feud has started off really red hot, but it's cooled down significantly by this point. And I think a lot of it has to do with Survivor Series being around, because they couldn't, instead of just kind of immediately following it up there, they had to kind of take a break from everything with the Raw versus SmackDown nonsense. And then even that night, Dean didn't get involved in Seth's match against Nakamura, which I still feel was a mistake. And then, so they've just kind of had to prolong this thing with hobbling around. And then some of Dean's promos, even though his delivery is good, and I like the character, they've done some weird things with it, with the doctor office thing I thought was a little too goofy and just bizarre. It just felt weird to me. I remember watching that, I was like, what? What is this? It just felt a little too hokey and not... It kind of diluted some of the dangerous element that Ambrose had when he first turned on Seth, where he looked like a legit killer. Yeah, plus they've had Rollins doing other things in between this, like the IC Open challenges and stuff. It just, I don't know, it's a lot of the momentum they had has just died off, basically. So I wasn't as pumped about this match as I would have been maybe a few weeks ago. And then the match itself was surprisingly lackluster. It was fine from a technical just standpoint, in a vacuum, but it felt like they never really got to that next gear. And as I've said before, a lot of that heat has since evaporated, so it just felt like they were just kind of wrestling. And I think another big thing was that this match needed a stipulation, because being a regular singles match for a championship feels a bit ill-suited for what is basically a blood feud. And having maybe this should have been the chairs match, or just anything, just so they could really beat the crap out of each other, because on paper, given the story, that's what they should want to do, is trying to just outright destroy each other and not so much out-wrestle each other to win a title. So yeah, and also the crowd wasn't super into it either. In fact, they even went as far as at one point to chant, this is boring, which in a Seth Rollins match is crazy to hear, especially 2018 Seth Rollins, who has been the MVP of the roster. So that was really weird. But yeah, it just never got to that next level, which was really disappointing to see. But anyways, Dean picked up the win, hitting Dirty Deeds, so he is now a 3-time Intercontinental Champion. And yeah, sure, I don't know where you go after this. I mean, they'll fight again, obviously, because if for no other reason, because Seth has his rematch. But I hope that the rematch is just something more than what this was, and especially following the kind of the WWE Championship match, which the crowd was very much into, and was this great singles wrestling match, to kind of go to another singles wrestling match with a story that has lost a lot of its heat, and kind of just be almost like a watered down version of the last match. It just didn't work. Again, kind of weird match placement, I guess, on the card. So yeah, I was kind of let down by this. A match I was not let down, though, was the main event, but the fact that this was the main event made me very happy, because it absolutely should have been the main event. So I'm glad WWE actually pulled the trigger on it. And that is the SmackDown Women's Championship match, a triple threat between the champion, Becky Lynch, the man, versus Charlotte Flair, the queen, against Asuka, the Empress of Tomorrow, in a tables, ladders, and chairs match. The first ever women's tables, ladders, and chairs match. Of course, the object of the match is to climb the ladder to retrieve the championship. You got 3 of the best women on the roster going at it. Just three mega powers, basically. And this was a really good match. It was a really, really fun match to watch. It was pretty much what I had hoped it would be, with all 3 of these women just beating the absolute hell out of each other. Like, they were just killing each other in this match. And man, it was so much fun. Like, everybody looked good. All of them got to show off and get some shine. And it was hard to tell who would win, honestly. Like, no one really held the advantage for long. There was one a particular spot in the match that looked absolutely painful when Charlotte and Asuka were laying on the announce table. Like, both of them got beat up by Becky and were laying side by side on an announce table. And then Becky climbed the ladder and did a leg drop a la Evolution, when she did the same thing to Charlotte in the last woman standing match. But Asuka moves out of the way, leaving Charlotte to take the brunt of the leg drop. But Becky lands square on Ronda. She lands square on Charlotte's stomach, like in her ribs, like her butt. So she basically like jumps off a ladder and lands 100% butt on her gut. Like, does not leg drop her, just lands on her stomach. And Charlotte, much like Liv Morgan earlier when she went through that table, Charlotte looked visibly in pain. I think she even said like, "Oh fuck," and had to kind of like censor it. But you could tell, like, if you go back and watch that part and like look at Charlotte's reaction, her face, like, that killed her basically, because how could it not? It's like a full-size person jumping off of a ladder and then coming full weight on your stomach, like that's your ribs and your gut. Like, if, again, like Liv Morgan, either you get the breath knocked out of you or your ribs are super duper hurt, and then you have you're not having a good time when it comes to breathing. But yeah, there's another great spot where Asuka got speared, not quite through the barricade by Charlotte, but it actually looked better that she didn't go totally through it. Like, she speared Asuka into the barricade and it budged a bit, like it went, they almost went through it, but not quite. So Asuka just almost gets like stopped in her track, like gets rammed against the wall, and it looked great. Like I said, I think it looks better than if they had just gone through it, because it looked more painful. Like, it looked like Asuka had just been run by a truck into like a brick wall and was just like squashed against it. And the way she kind of like crumpled down as Charlotte is kind of on top of her, and just it looked really good. The way they were beating each other with chairs, like they were taking some hard chair shots. Like, normally, and I don't say this with any sexism or anything like that, but normally when the ladies hit each other with chairs, it's not the hardest chair shots, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if they're intentionally told to like ease up a bit, but I've always noticed that they could, like, can they not hit each other harder? I mean, they're smaller, so the chair's bigger, so it's a little bit more unwieldy. But tonight, they were laying into each other with the chair shots, which was nice, and again, played up the brutality of the match. And I think that's what this match did too, was that it played up the brutality of what a TLC match can be, whereas, like, this is a very dangerous match, and these 3 ladies killed each other, and also make the championship look good, because they're doing all this stuff to each other because they all want to be champion, which means that the championship means a lot if they're willing to do this kind of stuff to each other. And then in a really cool twist that I love from a pure storytelling standpoint, they eventually 2 ladders are set up in the ring. Becky and Charlotte are fighting on the ladder that's kind of closer to the ropes and not as close to the belt. They're on top of the ladder just duking it out. Asuka's kind of down. And then Ronda Rousey walks out with purpose, just with revenge in her eyes, and the 2 ladies do not realize this because they're on top of the ladder. And then and then Ronda gets in and just sees them both, and before they realize what's going on, it's a little too late, because Ronda just shoves the ladder over, sending Becky and Charlotte hitting the ropes and outside of the ring, just taking them both out. And I thought that was great, just because, again, she actually paid off her threat of, the next time I see you guys, I'm going to get you both back because I owe both of you. I owe you, Becky, for attacking me in the locker room before Survivor Series, and she owes Charlotte for attacking her at Survivor Series. So I love that they managed to kind of kill two birds with one stone here. And then that opening gave Asuka what she needed to climb the ladder and retrieve the championship. So Asuka, surprisingly, is the winner of the match, which is crazy to say that Asuka is a surprise, but she was a dark horse, but I thought that Becky would retain, honestly. So I am so happy to see Asuka finally become women's champion on the main roster. She's had a very uneven year, you know, starting off the year undefeated and the most dangerous lady in the company, then losing to Charlotte at WrestleMania, and then kind of falling through the floor from there, especially over the summer with the ridiculous losses to Carmella, and then this fall being built back up to kind of getting her back to what she was, and now seeing her win the first ever TLC match, which that makes two first ever matches that Asuka has won. She won the first ever Women's Royal Rumble this year, and now she's won the first ever Women's TLC. And to become champion, you know, a great way to kind of cap off kind of a bit of a roller coaster of a year in terms of her booking. And also the crowd really loved it. The crowd has been wanting to see Asuka get to this point, especially in recent months. So, and it's great that it happened. It's great that it made sense within the three-way feud between Rousey, Charlotte, and Becky. And now this should lead to our first ever one-on-one match between Becky and Asuka, because Becky would be due a rematch, so I would imagine that would be at the Rumble, which should kick all sorts of ass, because those two are great. So I've been wanting to see Asuka and Becky in a one-on-one match, so on a big stage for the championship, I can't think of a better way to do it. And I can't think of a better way to end this TLC. That was a great match. It's nice that the show, you know, the show was a little up and down, but I'm glad that it ended with the show's namesake delivering on all fronts. There were some good matches here, like I said, the tag title match was good. The Corbin thing was a good angle, you know, not really meant to be a match. And then the WWE Championship match was good. The only letdown was the Ambrose and Rollins match, and then the Mixed Match Challenge match was never going to be good. It was just weird that it was even on the show more than anything. But yeah, and I excited to see what happens on Raw. Again, obviously it's already happened, but I don't know. So by the time you listen to this, I will probably be watching it and dropping my jaw at whatever big thing happened. I have some ideas of what happened just based on what I've heard, like murmurs, but it should hopefully shake up the show, because Raw, again, has not been good, and it's in dire need of an overhaul in multiple areas. So I hope that's what we got, or at least got the beginnings of what should be that. And I hope you got what you wanted with this review of Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. Thanks for listening, guys, and again, thanks for bearing with me during this kind of time of transition. I will be back for the Royal Rumble, which is one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year. Always a great time to watch, and just all the speculation around it. Once again, stay tuned for my new video game podcast in the new year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Basically, it's going to be me giving my commentary on just kind of the going-ons in gaming, talking about the games I'm playing, and just random, just gaming-related topics, as well as different fun little segments, some involving some guests that I'm excited about. I've already got a few segments recorded. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys and seeing what you think of it. It should be a lot of fun if you are a gamer, or even just have like a casual interest in video games, really. So if you want to find me on Twitter, as always, you can do so at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. You can also download the show from iTunes and Podbean, as well as listen to it on YouTube at my new freshly renamed YouTube channel, Marcus Makes Media. That's right, no longer Marcus Writes About Games, Marcus Makes Media. It's a little more apt, I believe. So if you haven't noticed the change, if you're a subscriber, that is what it is now, and I encourage you to subscribe and share and like. All three of those things would be quite dandy. And until next time, wrestling fans, I will see you after the Royal Rumble. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.